Welcome, dear listeners and viewers, to another episode of Embrace the Echo Grief Talks. My name is Shay, and today we will embark on how grieving a loss of a relationship has led to a transformative process of finding healing within ourselves. Relationships can leave profound imprints on our hearts, and when they end, the echoes of grief can also be powerful. So this type of grief is actually would fall under something called ambiguous loss type of grief. It's a type of loss where there's some uncertainty to it or lacks closure. This is not something that's tangible or not visible, unlike a traditional grief like death of a loved one physically. So, with ambiguous loss, this is a type of loss that focuses more on the relational aspect of grief that occurs between the two parties. Within the grieving process of this episode lies an art that allows us to release, to heal, and ultimately find ourselves. So, on today's episode, we will have a little bit of a different perspective. The art of letting go, healing, and growing beyond a relationship. Please join us as we explore the transformative journey of turning the page after a love's last chapter. So, we know that navigating the aftermath of a relationship can be a challenging journey, but it's also an opportunity for a profound growth and self discovery. It's not just about moving on, it's about moving forward with intention, compassion, and an open heart. So, whether you're in the midst of a breakup, healing from a past relationship, or simply looking for inspiration on your journey of self discovery, this episode might be for you. In today's episode, we are honored to have a very special guest, one who has navigated the winding roads of healing, but has also emerged as an inspiration of her resilience. I will be joined by Debbie. Debbie is a very good friend of mine for a little over 20 years. She has inspired me as she will be sharing how much personal growth that she's had after grieving a past love relationship. So she will be joining us today in conversations as she shares her journey and how she navigated grief that ultimately led to self discovery. So, without further ado, please let's welcome Debbie.
Thanks for the invite. I like that this episode is focused on how I healed and handled the grief that comes to a loss of a loved one and a relationship. Hi to all our listeners today, and welcome to UDRiVe's podcast. Is this what it's called?
So it's actually yeah. So it's run by UDRiVe, but this is podcast is specifically for Embrace the Echo Grief Talks. So
Oh,
actually, when we started doing this podcast, naalala talaga kita, Debs. I know that you've gone through this grief journey, a type of grief that is very unrecognizable. Oftentimes when we talk about grief, most people would talk about death, like physical death of a person na namatay, right?
that's
Physically.
right.
This is why I mentioned that this type of loss that you've experienced is something that would fall under the ambiguous loss type of category of grief. When our losses happened, it's also roughly around the same time when the end of a relationship happened to you. I thought now that we've kind of passed that hard stage of our grief and sa'yo rin, I thought it would be such an inspiration to open up and enlighten us yung based on this type of grieving, and to also kind of give a light to the experiences within this type of grief. Kasi, like I said, most people often don't acknowledge and recognize this type of loss.
I'm very honored to share this experience, and if it can help one person, I'm happy. Sometimes the goal sometimes of this podcast is you want to reach as much people, but honestly, ako when I speak or when I try to give an advice, kahit isa lang, one person is good enough for me. So yeah, I'm thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my journey towards healing.
You know na we prepared some questions for you today na na-review mo naman, I'm
Uh,
sure.
yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I would say almost all of it, except there's some that I'll just spontaneously maybe answer it.
Just let me know if there are any parts during our conversation that feel you want to pause or have a break, or again, any triggers
Mhm.
that you may have. Let me know, and we can always take time to co-regulate with you.
Yeah.
Okay, on the side. I'm ready when you are.
Okay. Yeah. Let's
Yes,
do it. Yeah. Mm.
let's begin. All right. So, my first question to you, Deb. Can you start by sharing a little bit about your own journey and how it led you to the understanding of healing and growth beyond a relationship?
Again, thank you, Shay, for giving me the opportunity to share my journey towards healing. My journey started 3 years ago when my 19-year relationship finally came to an end. It was a mutual decision between me and the ex to part ways, and thankfully, we were able to end things amicably. What happened was I decided to move back to my family. Decided to start a life, a new my new life here in Vancouver. So actually, for people that don't know me, I used to live here in Vancouver and moved to the East Coast, Toronto. And then after the pandemic, I realized, there's nowhere else to go but to go back to your family. I found myself just packing my stuff, deciding I want to be close to my family because that's where my support system is anyway, right? Just a little bit about that journey. Maybe that was the easiest part, the packing, the selling, when you have 19 years that you've built with this person, there are things that you have to sell, like get rid of. And then moving back during pandemic, it was a bit challenging because the services that we're used to weren't available, right? So moving back to Vancouver, I actually drove, this story. I drove for 5 days on my own. So it was a very surreal and parang life changing experience. I've
Yeah.
never done that, like mag-isa ka on the road for 5 days. It was more of a full circle kind of moment because when I moved to Toronto, I moved with her. We drove together. So going back at the end of the relationship, ako na lang, right? So it was a good experience. Wala namang uneventful na nangyari. I thank the Lord for it na he guided me through those 5 days in the wilderness. Alam mo naman in Canada, it's actually a very scenic drive. I was just taking my time. There's no rush. So I was stopping. Pag may nakita akong maganda, I stopped, I take photos. And there are like people who will approach me to ask me, "Oh, do you want me to take your photo?" Kasi nagpipicture-picture ako doon mag-isa. Yeah, and I met people along the way, shared experiences with them at a pit stop. Yeah, it was hindi ko naramdaman na mag-isa ako
Yeah.
during that time. Anyway, 5 days later, I'm in Vancouver, time to get settled. And that's where the journey started. Like once everything settled down, yung adrenaline rush, wala na.
Yeah.
All the realizations when you're alone, wala lang nandyan, that's when all it comes. That's where you ask yourself, is this the right decision I actually made? So little did I know that the emotional and mental aspect of separation and detachment would be the hardest. In short, I didn't see it coming and I was not ever prepared for it. I had to allow myself to grieve. Grieving the loss of the person you shared your hopes and aspirations with. That version of my future that was tied to her of what could have been.
Mhm.
That was the hardest. Yeah. The loss of my identity. Imagine being with a person for almost 2 decades of my life, and one day you wake up and your life's totally different. I have to grieve that as well. Finding peace and healing within myself was the hardest part. Like, where and how do I begin? The past 3 years made me realize that healing is truly one's journey. It's a lifelong journey. It doesn't stop. That's what my realization is. There's no timeline, and there will be moments of regression, but that is part of the process. It was a continuous process of learning and unlearning. I had to acknowledge the role I played in the
Mhm.
relationship, um, forgive myself, and embrace the change. I guess that's how I grew from the experience
Mhm.
and evolve as the new like me, new Debbie,
Right.
version 2.0, better version of myself. I'm really proud to say the challenges and adversities will really test you, but you come out stronger after. And
Mhm.
for those people who are going through a breakup, believe me, it's hard, but it's going to be okay. I didn't believe people when people tell me it's going to be okay. I'm like, how can you say that? It feels like they don't understand what I'm going through, when they say it's gonna be okay. But I can attest, and I can confidently say that it will be okay. Just go through the process. In a nutshell, that's that's kind of what happened. 3 years later, I'm now here in Vancouver, living that life, that version of me. That's already where the chapter ended from 19 years, and so far I'm still navigating and exploring that version, and I just look forward for what's gonna happen and for the best, right? So here I am today, 3 years later. Yeah, exactly 3 years later. This is the time when I actually decided to make that decision around this time, spring.
Yes. So
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
that's good. Well, thank you for sharing that, Debs. It's, there was a lot there that you shared. It's pretty much yung summary of what the 3 year looked like from the time that you moved from Toronto to BC, the drive. But I want to break that down a little bit. So this is where we're going to go into the nitty gritty of
Yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so just really breaking down the narratives. May follow-up actually ako dyan, dun sa, when you were driving from Toronto to Vancouver, syempre, the scenic route is nice. It's, in a way, I would say, yeah, good distraction in a way. Did you ever caught yourself, but like, I'm sure stuff are going through your mind when you're driving alone.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what are some of the thoughts, what were some of the emotions that you felt that was going through in your mind while you were having that drive, that 5 day? 5 days is a lot of days.
5 days, yeah. Honestly, I try to block, because I feel like if I let myself loose and feel, I'm gonna probably make a U-turn and just go back. There were moments where your life just flashes back on you, like moving from, like, that's a big change. Moving from one city to another city. Although I'm familiar with Vancouver, but I've had almost 2 decades of my life in Toronto. That
Mhm.
is a huge change for me. So the fear of that unknown, the unexpected, it just goes through my mind like, how am I gonna start my life? I'm all by myself now. I have to survive on my own. Although I know I have my family, but
Mhm.
obviously as an adult, you gotta find work, my career, what's in store with my career. Now
Mhm.
I quit my job for like almost 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So it's all mixed emotions of more of like fear of the unknown for sure. The thing is, it wasn't sinking in.
Mhm.
Or I was actually trying to stop myself from feeling and looking at the what the reality is in front of me. This is it, I'm definitely moving away from
Mhm.
her. So it was all mixed emotions of what my life is going to be now, that conflicting emotions that usually, wears you down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Young relationship, breaking up, divorce, mixed emotions, like sobrang, it's a pool of emotions where one day ito ka,
Yeah.
next day you don't know what you're gonna feel.
Yeah.
It's just a very, like you said, ambiguous, very hard area to navigate. That's why you really need guidance, pagdating dyan. So yeah, it was difficult, but I honestly, at that time, I tried not to entertain
Mhm.
any, because I'm driving. I have to like focus on the road
Glad
and
that you got that.
make
Yes.
sure I arrive Vancouver in like one piece.
Mhm. That's right. Well, safety first, diba? Safe.
Exactly, yeah. But
Um.
there were moments, especially nako, pag nasa when you're in the prairies where everything is flat, parang it's just a straight road. You don't
Mhm.
know where it's ending. I caught myself really talking to myself. I'm eating my chips. I have a stash beside me with. I always make sure that there's enough chocolates and chips to keep me awake. Talking to myself, like really, kasi it was so boring that part of the drive. Yeah, I survived. I survived. Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you for sharing that. Nabanggit natin na you gotta be um pretty much aware, within that 5 day
Mhm.
period. So you tried to block those emotions, but you did verbalize na there was a fear of the unknown. There's mix of emotions, loss of the partnership. It wasn't sinking in, right? So there was a lot there to process. Pero yung the way you had to block, I think that's a normal process din. Kasi nga parang you're not ready to face the reality of things. And plus, nagda-drive ka. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
if you end up, you're alone, if you end up, something happens to you,
yeah,
you gotta be alert where you're going, right?
exactly. And
Navigating your
talking
system.
about the normal response of the body, your body and mind tends to protect you.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
always makes you want to feel safe. Kaya
Yeah.
whenever we feel danger is coming, we
Mm.
block it.
Yeah.
No, it's only now that I understood that.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So yun pala yun.
Oo,
Yeah,
tama yun. And that's the thing that not a lot of people recognize, na these are normal responses that our body, um, you know, tends to,
Like,
natural reaction nga dun
yeah,
sa situation na yun, whatever that may be. Because again, the priority is to put ourselves in that safe zone, right?
yeah.
So, salamat. That was a nice kind of back and forth. So, let's move on to the next question. Were there any specific moments or realizations that played a crucial role in your healing journey after the relationship ended?
A lot of moments that I had a chance
Mhm.
to, or the choice, I could have made the choice at that time to heal, but I didn't. It was just not one moment, a lot of series of events that led me to that one specific moment. That part where I was already at the end of the rope, which is just last year, where I felt like I've done everything I could. I was going through therapy, all the things that what do you call this, that people advise you to do, like go out, put yourself out there, meet new friends, learn something new. I felt like I've journaling, like I felt I've done everything else, but when triggers come, I guess anniversary dates, special dates or memories, I get triggered.
Mhm.
So, especially around fall, that's when it's kind of memorable to me, because that's when it hit me the hardest back in 2022. So, when that same day came last year, I felt like I wasn't really moving forward, and I was having actually nightmares all of a sudden. So I told myself, maybe I should go back and do some work, therapy, go back to my therapist, which I did. So I had to maybe do 3 regular sessions with her, and then she introduced me to this EMDR therapy, which is for really for a lot of people who went through post traumatic stress disorder, where the therapist helps you process all those traumas and emotions that you weren't able to process way back, like even sa pagkabata, lahat.
Yeah.
It encompasses your life as a child, an adult, everything, lahat ng trauma na naranasan mo. That was the pivotal moment. Like after that session, 80 minutes,
Mhm.
night and day difference. Oh my gosh, I cannot be thankful enough for that person that my therapist suggested that specific therapy. I guess in terms of like that pivotal moment where I parang nagkaroon ka ng breakthrough. Was it back in November last year lang? Imagine from the time I uh, I moved back here,
Yeah.
that's almost 3 years later pa.
Right.
Not a it is really a journey. It is a process. You cannot rush things
Mhm.
na gusto mo okay ka na, because
Mhm.
that's what makes it more meaningful, that journey, because you remember every single thing na pinagdaanan mo, and you don't want to go back. You
Mhm.
wouldn't want to go back to that
Yeah.
same old version of you, or kung saan ka nahirapan, dun ka natututo. That's how you learn from that experience. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Thank you for sharing that. So you said you seek therapy. Can you just confirm, is this the therapist that you saw, was this like a trauma therapist? What did they specialize in?
yes, trauma informed. She specializes in LGBTQ
Okay.
relationships.
Right.
So when I was searching for their profiles, looking through their profiles, I specifically chose this therapist because she specializes in relationships and issues. And um, I guess that trauma informed therapy is always part of what they do. That's where she focused on it later on when she got to know my story and everything, she's trying to figure out what's holding me back. Doon niya ako dinala sa traumas ko from my
Right.
childhood to
Right.
understand why I am the way I am and not get frustrated because it's part of ano wala namang tao na lumaki na walang trauma sa buhay. No
Yeah.
one had a perfect childhood, and it's either you unlearn all those things that doesn't serve you anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So dun siya nag-focus, yeah.
That's part of the trauma therapy, and it's like looking back at the previous traumas that you've had even in the childhood and understanding on how it made you the way you are now. Kasi yun nga, like, we grew up learning na ito yung mga responses mo nung pagkabata ka pa na hindi mo na nare-realize na you're actually carrying that into your adulthood stage then.
If you didn't feel safe around that time, the way you handle relationships, yung trauma mo from that time.
Yeah.
And obviously, your definition of love comes from how you felt or how your parents showed you love,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it made me understood why I would always need validation from someone because
Mm-hmm.
growing up, I felt like my parents would only recognize me if I do good in school. Good job, Debbie, because you're a top two of your class or you earned an award. In my adult life, in terms of relationship, I would always want to perform
Right.
for me to receive something.
Mm-hmm.
That's my definition of love. Kailangan may ibigay ako para may maibalik sa akin. Good job, magaling,
Mm-hmm.
okay ka, you deserve this, parang gano'n, reward or
Yeah.
mahalin ka,
Yeah.
'yun. Obviously growing up, ang we always we've seen sa parents natin na transactional ang pagmamahal, parang gano'n na kailangan may kapalit, and especially with Filipino culture, investment tayong mga anak, 'di ba? Kailangan
That's for another that's for another episode maybe.
sabi nga, but anyway, that's how I perceive love.
Yeah.
Love last na kailangan that I deserve love, kailangan I have to perform,
Mm-hmm.
kailangan magawa akong maganda, you know. Yeah, those were, little things that made me understood and accept where I am and not be too hard on myself, because it is what it is.
Thank you. It's nice to hear that yung having that awareness coming from someone who's being trauma informed. Kasi nga, it's not everybody is aware of this being trauma informed because it's really understanding the roots, right? The root cause of why we behave the way we do now.
Yes.
Not to blame what happened in the past, but it's to understand how we can move past that. So us as an adult now can break that cycle,
Mhm.
right? At the end of the day, nurse ka rin, Devs, putting you on the spot. And we see different people that suffers with so much chronic illnesses
Mm.
and correlations nung mga,
Oh, yeah.
traumas that are stuck within the body
Oh, yeah.
that could end up into chronic illnesses later on.
Correct.
Hearing from the narratives from my own patients alone or clients alone na yung mga history nila of how it was, how stressful life was for them, or maybe not, but perhaps it was just a way, sorry, a way for them to cope during those difficult times, whatever stressor they might have during their early years. So salamat that you pointed that out. I think that's very meaningful for our viewers to also understand. You said the journey is what makes it more meaningful. I remember that from what you said. The journey is a process. Andun yung process eh,
Yeah.
'di ba? So
Yeah.
we'll break it down a little bit more. On
Mm-hmm.
to our next question, okay? Yung process na yun.
Sure, sure.
So let's move on to the third question. So how did you navigate the balance between allowing yourself to grieve and actively seeking healing?
That's a really good question to ponder on. Honestly, it was the most difficult part of this journey, allowing myself to grieve, sitting, letting myself feel the pain, where I have to accept things as it was and as it is. Yun nga, the conflicting emotions, the guilt, regret, anger,
Mhm.
frustration. I didn't realize that processing all of these emotions I feel is what I needed to heal. Like, our natural response, of course, is to distract ourselves, eh, 'di ba? When you feel danger is coming on, ko na, naramdaman ko na, ayan na naman, distract yourself. So what I did for the first couple of years, I traveled. It was a good experience. I'm not saying I didn't have to do it or I didn't needed it. Kailangan I had to do it. Um, but it's like slapping a band-aid solution, eh, on the wound. Later on, no matter how much you deny, distract yourself, the truth of your that truth will always come out. Of course, it was not a very pleasant feeling. That's why you want to distract yourself, diba? And we are at our most vulnerable when we allow ourselves to grieve. Again, like I said earlier, our body and mind's reaction is always to protect when it senses danger. So before I started therapy, when I'm sad or when my past haunts me, I would always distract myself to make sure I don't feel anything.
Mhm.
I thought that was the way to heal. I did it for the first couple of years after the separation, which was actually counterproductive. I then came to a point where I'm like, what am I doing wrong? I felt like I've already done everything I could, but it feels like, I'm just going in circles. I'm not moving forward. I'm stuck. Again, I started seeking therapy. And that's where, again, going back to your previous question, that's where the pivotal moment happened 2.5 years later. And that's when, like, the therapist actually focused on the trauma and why am I the way I am. So I had to release myself from all those those traumas. Um and I had to let myself feel, which was, if you're asking me how did I balance it, I don't think it would always be that yung balance sa sa swing. It's never balanced because I think you have to when you feel the pain, the frustration, the anger, the whatever, the pendulum swings like
Like this.
totally flip, eh. Oo, yeah. And you have to do something to put it in balance again. It's never balanced. It's
Mhm.
always things one side or the other, and you're the key person to do the balancing. Parang ganun. Yeah, yeah. So you have to know yourself. Again, self-awareness is the key. When you're falling through the cracks, alam mo na you're gonna go downhill. You have
Mhm.
to do something. You have to wake yourself up. Come on, can't be like this all the time. And also the key is not to be too hard on yourself. I think we're the hardest critic on ourselves. And the grace you're gonna give a friend, hindi mo mabigay sa sarili mo.
Mhm.
So I had to check and balance my myself regarding that aspect na I have to give grace to myself. I've been through a lot. Like, I'm doing all the work. And again, yung going back and forth regression, that's
Mhm.
okay. That's part of the process. I have to embrace that. I guess being compassionate on myself really helped a lot in terms of balancing that, allowing myself to grieve. And um,
Mhm.
everyone's journey is different. So there's no perfect recipe for it. You find your own pace, you find your own process and your own timeline. Yeah, that's how I I guess that's how I did it.
Thank you for sharing. Follow-up question lang. I know you've touched on, like, acknowledging those emotions and how you manage all those emotions and how you give yourself permission to feel them and process it, right?
Mhm.
But can you touch on setting boundaries? Yeah. Did you have to set boundaries with yourself and others through this grieving process, or like, through the healing journey? And was there any triggers or situations that perhaps aggravated your loss, especially like, social gatherings, ganyan,
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, setting boundaries.
Yeah. Oh yeah. For sure. And I only learned how to set boundaries. Actually, the real meaning of setting boundaries after I moved here,
Mm-hmm.
because you know, as you know, 19 years you spent with one person, you built your life, your that social connection you have with one person. Of course, it includes friends, her family, everything is connected to that one person. So whether I like it or not, I have to cut ties.
Mm-hmm.
um and it was one of the most difficult decisions I also have to make, because I had to question myself, why am I cutting my relationship with this person when I only broke up with my ex? Not these people are not involved, but in reality it doesn't serve me well, and it's not good for my mental health to know what's happening with her,
Mm-hmm.
when friends are gathering and she's there.
Mm-hmm.
um at first I thought, oh, okay lang ako, I mean, it's okay, she's there. But later on I figured out it's not okay anymore. So I lost friends along the way. But I have to think of myself this time. That was my main goal. I've been parang iniisip for the last how many 19 years. I've been like looking after this one person. Parang this time ako naman. That boundary meant cutting friendship relationships. Some I didn't really cut off, but I had to like just stop talking to them. And even sometimes they try to reach out to me, I had to draw the line that, sorry, I'm not appreciating what I'm hearing right now, and I have to ask their motive for bakit mo ako kinukwentuhan, mga gano'n. So, it was hard, and some didn't really reached out to me, but it was my choice to kind of, parang distance myself from them, because alam ko they're not gonna help me
Mm-hmm.
in this process, right? But maybe later on, we could reconnect. Who knows, right? It's not the end of ano naman. But at the end of the day, as you get older, you don't really care what people think of you anymore. You look after yourself. You fend for yourself. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a lot there that we know what
Mm-hmm.
you did to set those boundaries. I think the whole shift of you physically moving from Toronto to Vancouver is a huge physical setting boundary already. So that's a huge step, Debbie.
Yeah.
So I commend you for taking that one huge step. Hindi madali yun. Hindi ka lang lumabas outside of Toronto. You actually moved back uh,
Uh-huh.
to a different province, and I
Yes. Yes.
mean, you're with your family, so that's your main support, which is, it makes sense. You want to be with the people that you feel safe, and that cutting ties along, you've lost friends along the way, and you really had to, you said you had to cut, you have to focus on yourself and really cut those people that doesn't serve you well, or like kapag ibang motives nila, yeah, I get that. Salamat for sharing those. So let's move on now to our fourth question. So what advice would you give to our listeners who are currently in the midst of their own healing journey, trying to find their way after a significant relationship has ended?
Ooh, advice. I'm not a therapist or anything. I'm just talking through experience and what I've personally experienced. That's why I'm able to give this advice, okay? First of all, moving on is never easy. Every individual have their own coping mechanism. My first advice maybe is you really have to be patient, because whether you like it or not, it will be painful, okay? Sa mga gusto nang kumawala sa mga karelasyon nila, it will be painful. So, allow yourself to feel. wallow as long as it takes, Wala namang nagsasabi na 3 months ka na, you're in misery, kailangan naka-move on ka na. There's no such thing as, you pace yourself, right? Um, Understand that healing from relationship wounds is not linear. So, if you're familiar with the stages of grief, yung dabda, 'di ba?
Yeah.
Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, 'di ba? It's in order, 'di ba? But I'm telling you now, it's not going to happen in order. You'll be going back and forth between the stages, or even going back to square one. After so long, you find yourself like, okay, akala mo okay ka na. Yan, ito, I can really speak for this. You think you're really okay, but then just one day you wake up, you're like, why does it feel like I'm back to square one, Especially when, yung mga, there's like exes that like to show up again, 'di ba? Parang, so again, it's okay if you find yourself, you're back to square one, or you're going through the stages of grief back and forth. Just be patient with yourself and be forgiving, you know.
Mhm.
Um, Imagine you're doing the hard work and
Mhm.
you're hard on yourself, 'di ba? Parang you have just take it easy. That's my take on this. I had to learn that as well. It's another topic. Then, most importantly, invest in your relationship with yourself. Ayan, take a break if you must, especially if your failed relationship is a toxic one. So there's usually a big debate about this. People will say the easiest way to get over someone is to get a replacement, diba? Or jump into another relationship. If it worked for you, well and good. But as for me, I realized that rushing to fill that void without really figuring out what I want or what I need is a recipe for a recurring relationship disaster. So, one of the best things you can do is figure out who you are, what
Mhm.
you need, and how to get those needs met. And to truly know that, you have to figure it out on your own. Matuto kang mag-isa. Because in your moment of silence and vulnerability, that's when everything is loud. You can hear yourself better. I don't know how else to explain it, but that's my personal experience when I'm in my own apartment, I'm by myself, I'm able to process
Mhm.
more. I think that's the best outcome after, in terms of healing. Yeah.
You mentioned something about investing, invest your relationship with yourself, and
Mhm.
you're true, truly advocating for this. And I know you're very passionate about this, Debs.
Yeah.
I think it's important to really know who we are first. And kasi
Ex-
minsan it would get to the point na that we're in that adult stage na kailangan nating baguhin. But it starts with first you have to really work. Talagang it's a deep work, you
yeah.
know.
And you find yourself like, um, okay, what do I do?
Mhm.
In order for me to untangle, let's say, this messy part of my life, step back a little
Mhm.
and figure out this first things first, parang ganun. Yung self-awareness na yan, how did I do that? So if after a long-term relationship, or you've broken up with someone
Mhm.
and you immediately jumped into another relationship, you didn't really have time to figure out what went wrong and what
Mhm.
needed to be fixed, or internalize yung, or process all that grief. Every time you end something, a relationship
Mhm.
with someone, a job or something, you have to process, 'di ba? Hindi puwedeng sinantabi mo na lang 'yan, tapos do'n ka na naman, bago ka na naman. And that's where all the trauma and unprocessed emotions accumulate in your body, 'di
Yeah.
ba? Yeah, and it stresses you in the long run.
Yeah.
Physically, yun nga, nagkakasakit ka na. It's really, again, journey, process,
When it comes to grief, again, whether you're grieving a loss of a relationship or a death of a loved one, you really got to dedicate the time to process. Kasi
mm,
ganun din, I was fortunate enough to have 8 months off when I was after our losses. Talagang I wasn't distracted by work. Talagang even if I had to think about work after our losses, hindi ko kaya. Kasi I was, there was so many, like 3 months in pa nga lang I was already anxious. Like I couldn't provide care,
yeah,
period.
yeah,
I'm not safe. I'm
yeah,
not even safe in my own body. Why? How can I even be safe in providing care to others, right? Maraming mga process of understanding why I was behaving the way I was. So, talaga, with the process that you've went through and really taking the time for yourself to understand who you really are. Kaya sabi ko, okay,
You
I
know?
need to
And that's
understand.
part of ano eh, that's part of growth. And that's why I truly embraced it eh. Kasi yung katawan have to grow. Why would you stop yourself from like learning? And this is where people are not aware that their life, or maybe their where they are in their comfort zone, and parang nag-aas na ng change and they're not aware of it. They find that's when they find themselves questioning ano ba nangyari sa kanila, malungkot sila, feeling all this like parang they're not going anywhere, because that's life asking you. You have to change, you have to grow, 'di
Yeah.
ba? Parang gano'n eh. So
Oo.
don't resist it when it comes, just embrace it, because you know, you never know what's on the other side of the fence. It's when you get that breakthrough from like just finding purpose and
Mhm.
meaning, yung
Mhm.
everyday gigising ka, ano bang purpose mo sa buhay? That's a nice question to ask, and it gives you motivation to like wake up every morning and say, "Oh, I have a purpose today. Ito ang purpose ko sa buhay." So, um yeah, I mean, yeah. So anyway, I have a few more like advices. Maybe I'll just read this quickly.
Go ahead.
Isa pa ito, consider learning something new or adding things to your routine. That's really a huge thing after a breakup. You have to detach from your old routine, and learning something new is always good. Have a solid support system. Yeah, because talking about my feelings to my family and friends really helped a lot. They're like my safety blanket. And remember that you don't have to go through your problems alone. Let go and practice acceptance. Huge, huge aspect of healing, and probably the most difficult to navigate. The end of an attachment needs acknowledgement from our psychological health. This acknowledgement means looking at our own feelings and accepting that it is all right to miss that person even though we are angry or hurt. Like, minsan yan yun eh, after a breakup, parang, "Di ko na dapat to namimiss eh." So, it's okay. And lastly, consider professional help. Having a third person perspective, especially a professional, can help us navigate the blind spots or the things that are unfamiliar.
Thank you, Debbie. That was very, very, very helpful. Tsaka very insightful rin. Alam naman natin na everybody grieve differently, but I think those advices are to the point. And I'm sure it's very applicable to anyone who is grieving, right?
Mhm.
But you just gotta choose which one works for you because everybody's different, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, thank you. Let's move
Mm.
on to our next question. So, in your experience, how has the process of letting go and growing beyond a relationship impacted your overall well being and sense of self?
In this process of, I realized the importance of self care. You know, and self care happens when you start loving yourself. And loving myself was the most difficult and challenging part. You know, I had no idea. I really had no idea what it means to love yourself, because it also means I have to accept the ugly part of me. Yung part ko na ayoko sa sarili ko, right? And that's not easy to do. I have to accept the most unlovable parts of me, and there were days, honestly, where I told myself, maybe I don't have to love everything about myself, um just like with long-term relationships, loving ourselves is commitment, perseverance, and acceptance. It doesn't have to be perfect. Loving myself is also, it's just like any other relationship, diba? You have to accept even your flaws. And some days you don't like yourself, okay lang. It's not a perfect life. So I have to remind myself that loving, or at least accepting myself, is a lifelong pursuit. So, because when you have a strong sense of self-love, you understand your own value and treat yourself in a loving way. And that's how I found, you know, the meaning of self-worth, and why not you don't need anyone to validate or acknowledge your worth,
Mm-hmm.
because you yourself know your value. And how did I know my value? I worked hard for it. That was huge. That was a huge realization and part of this grief na hindi mo ma-imagine na you had to go through grief para ma-realize yan. And people are scared to do it kasi mahirap eh. Sinasabi ko, it's not for everyone. I get it when people need someone beside them to help them to go through grief. I respect that. Going through grief alone is not for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I realized. Yeah. So you do you, what's best for you, but people that go through grief alone and come out stronger, I admire them because I went through it and hindi madali, and you'll be really proud of yourself after you go through it. So once you go through it and see what's on the other side, nako, parang life changing. And people that continuously parang pursue change and growth
Mm-hmm.
will find meaning talaga sa buhay nila. That's why other people, when they tell me, like, lungkot ko, I don't know what my purpose is, I know where it's stemming from. Right away, you're like, but of
Yeah.
course, it's their own journey. So I just listen to them. And, if there's anything I can help them explore it more, then, you know, because it's a decision. It's once you explore it, it just goes deeper and deeper and darker. You have to be prepared for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You natural tendency. This is not just about relationship. This is also about your especially my friends, like their personal, their traumas that they haven't really explored and really parang healed.
Mm-hmm.
So healed from, now it's resurfacing in their adult life, and it's affecting them
Yeah.
personally, mentally. That's why I said, yung self-awareness na yun, I hope like everyone gets to have that awareness that when they reach that point na they think they need to parang approach it, not avoid it, that
Mm-hmm.
they will.
Well, self awareness is huge, right? As much as we want for people to get that awareness, it's, like we said, it's everybody has their own path.
Mhm.
And nandito lang tayo when they're ready, or if they're ready to process and help process that, and help them navigate through that. Kasi nga, it's not easy. It's very hard because it's gonna take a lot of deep personal work.
Yes.
Let's move on to our next question. Did you find support from friends, family, or professional helpful, and how did you go about seeking or accepting that support? I think we may have touched parts of it
Yeah.
already through our
Right.
conversation, but you can just point it out again.
Yeah, definitely. Again, my family, my friends were my safety blanket. So whenever I feel vulnerable, communicating those emotions and feelings, releasing it is
Mhm.
very important. You don't want to keep it all in. First of all, it's not good for your mind, and again, your body, you're just storing all the traumas again in your body, which is
Mhm.
physically is not good for you. So I do have sets of friends that are my go-tos, like um that I know that I can talk to them and reach out to them any time of the day. And I can't be thankful enough. Ikaw, your ate, shout out. Shout out to mga Toronto friends ko dyan. I guess God put these people in my life for a purpose, and that purpose was fulfilled when I needed them the most. They were really there. Like I can even remember this one friend I have. You know who you are. I was crying for 5 hours on the phone with her,
Mhm.
just pouring out. Feeling ko yung kaluluwa ko lumabas na rin sa sobrang iyak. Yeah, I've never cried that hard, and
Mhm.
that was I really appreciate you, like nabuhay ka para do sa moment na yon. Thank you for that friend of mine. And obviously all my friends here also in Vancouver, they're very supportive, and they're rooting for me. Even now, they're always saying, I hope you find, when you can, like a partner na you can feel safe with. And that's also one thing actually, acceptance, di ba, na parang you know after while going through the pain, and then once you find healing, automatically you accept your fate na parang okay lang if I'm gonna grow old na ako lang mag-isa, okay ka eh. Okay ka na. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, family definitely was a huge played a huge role kasi sometimes I don't even have to talk to them. Just them being around me, I feel safe, I feel loved. And again, after losing a loved one, like a person you've been with you felt love for 19 years, I had to look for it somewhere else eh. Because there's other people that love me. Hindi lang naman siya eh.
Mm-mm. Yeah, yeah.
Always remember that there are other people that can show love to you in other ways, not just a romantic type of love. It could be a platonic type of love, or yung love that just is just there, wants to listen to you in your silence. Alam mo yung ganon. So there's so many things and in other ways that you can feel loved, hindi lang sa partner.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was a huge thing. And there are random people that I met
Mm-hmm.
that actually reminded me yung pagte-therapy is important. Actually, a friend I met through like a work I at the airport when I used to work there for like a few months. She just mentioned it to me. That's where I started my therapy journey. Kumbaga nakalimutan ko na oh, oo nga pala no. I think I need therapy. I have strong faith in God, and I know that he the ducks my ducks were lining up. It was all planned. It wasn't an accident where I am right now. And every random person, friend that I met had a purpose in my life.
You don't have to go through your problems alone, in quote from Debbie. Totoo yan. And we're not alone. Kaya nga, like, this podcast is to, as we bring light to these stories, having that sense of compassion and understanding others people's pain, and where they're coming from too, right?
Mhm, mhm.
So yeah, thank you. Let's move on to I think our last question. Can you share any resources or tools that were particularly beneficial in your journey towards self-discovery and healing?
I guess tools. Well, I read some self-help books, and then podcasts is one of my go-to. Mel Robbins,
Mm,
love Mel Robbins, and Matthias Barker. I even sent you yung profile niya. Yeah. So, social media, obviously. TikTok University. I have learned so much bits and pieces of like clips
mhm,
ng mga therapists there. And obviously, the internet is a good resource. If you're working and you have EAP, okay? Like for everyone who's working in North America, I don't know if in the Philippines it's applicable, ha? EAP, Employee Assistance Program. It's a good resource for anything and everything under the sun. You call them, may problema ka. They have some sort of solution. Para silang Google ng employee hotline.
yeah.
So, 24/7 they're there. I found myself calling them randomly and just asking them, I really need help and help me navigate through this. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good resource. And obviously friends and family is really your best friend going through, life. I'm a believer, I have a strong faith in God. Number one source of energy and resource is God. My faith, of course. I've it's nice that I came here and I'm able to go to church, feed my soul somehow. Kailangan ko yun eh, so I'm not saying I'm religious, pero I make sure that every Sunday I go to church. And I found myself also being active again in the music ministry. Yeah, I play the drums once in a while. Yeah, if you're not religious or anything, you have to have something that you can hold on to it, like some
Mhm,
type of faith. Where every time you wake up, there's meaning and purpose, and you tell yourself why you're here.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all. If you're gonna ask me if I made the right decision, oh yes, 150%. I did the right thing. Yeah.
That's why I never doubted you to be part of this podcast. Because your journey is, again, I've witnessed that, here and there. Sometimes we would message, we would check in. So that's why I think about you, and
And
to journey that with you, and hearing that little nits and pieces of the information that you shared today with us is huge. It's valued. It's very valuable, not just for me, but also to those people that are watching. I think talagang makakatulong.
we're still, I don't know, like in our early 20s, 'di ba? When we met and we
I
had.
think I was 16, no, 17.
Oh,
No, but I'm just really glad that we were able to
yeah,
still,
it's nice to keep, you know, it's my foundation eh, yung when I look back and I still have my core
mhm.
memories from my friends and where we started, it makes me even more grounded as a person. You know, yung identity ko, sino ko,
Yeah.
having this solid group of friends that I have, parang I can conquer the world na and anything, you know, kahit anong mangyari sa akin. I'm thankful for you, for your friendship. You're a big influence in my career. Okay, mga books mo, hiniram ko. I got to nursing school because of all of your help and encouragement. So you're a big part of this journey. Don't ever, think na isa ka lang ano, you're a huge part of my life, Shay. So thank you. And I
Thank
love you.
you. Love you, Debs. Thank you so much. It's such a very meaningful, and it's really, I'm touched by
Oh,
um,
yeah, yeah.
that recognition of our friendship, as well. And also as you share your journey, in this type of loss. Again, we're just growing and healing, all at the same time. And I'm happy to be part of that
Yeah.
um, journey as well. Is there any other thing, any comments, remarks before we end?
I mean, I guess for anyone going through pain and grief, know that you're not alone. Make sure you seek help and um I hope through that grief you get to find yourself the healing that you're looking for. Every person's different, so just be patient and have compassion to yourself. It's not like a, one click and you're done. You're healed. It is a process, and you have to be patient. Yeah. So yeah, just embrace change and growth. I'm telling you, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay.
As we close today's episode, again, we just want to thank you all for joining us on this special episode. Today, we've had the privilege of hearing Debbie's story and insights on navigating grief and finding self healing after the loss of a relationship. So remember, healing is a journey, it's not a destination. As you embark on your own path of recovery, we hope that today's conversation brought some light, inspiration, and hope towards your journey of grief and self discovery. So, if you found today's episode resonating, please share it with someone who might benefit. We're all part of a supportive community, and together we can help each other find strength and vulnerability. Before we go, again, we just wanted to say thank you, Debbie, for taking the time to share with us part of your grief journey and healing. We appreciate you and your time.
Thank you, and same to you likewise. Thank you, Shay. I love you.
And love you too. And of course, we are sending our heartfelt gratitude for our listeners and viewers for joining us today in our conversation. Please don't forget to like, share, follow, and subscribe to our UDRiVe YouTube channel as well as in our Facebook group page. And as we end today's episode, please remember that the echoes of resilience are within each one of us. Until next time, take care, be kind to yourselves, and keep embracing the journey of healing and self discovery. See you on the next episode of Embrace the Echo Grief Talks. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.